You guys are always asking me, what do I do with all the vegetables I grow? How do I preserve them? Because yes, I really do use them up. So today we're gonna can green beans. Now, canned green beans are one of those things that growing up, mom would do 30, 40, 50 or more quart a year. So we would have green beans all the time. And it's honestly one of a really simple thing to can, other than, since they are a low acid food, it is best to pressure can them, just to kill all the bacterium and prevent botulism. Pressure canning gets it to a much higher temperature, and so it kills it all out. So to do that, the process is easy, but you just have to get used to your pressure canner. So to do this, I really just start with picked green beans. I love jade beans. That's the type my mom always used, my grandma loved them. They're long, don't get too big, and don't get a fat bean in the middle, which is what I like for a good bean. So these are all washed, cleaned, and then I'm just gonna cut them into kind of bite-sized pieces. Just think if you've ever had a canned green bean, the size they would be. And as you see, I did quite a few earlier. Usually you wanna think it takes about 1 pound per quart jar. In a quart jar, I mean, growing up, we had a family of 4, and I would say that always comfortably fed a family of 4 and usually had a little bit of leftover. So quarts are kind of the best way to go to me, unless you're maybe cooking for 2 people or 1 person, you go down to a pint. So after you clean them and then cut the ends off, you just wanna also inspect them. Let me see if I have any bad ones. Honestly, jade beans are always so good that I feel like I don't find rough spots or bad spots. If you do, like just say I found a bad spot, you would just slice it off and cut it out and then go in there because you wouldn't really notice it. So once you have all these in here, I've been packing my jars. It's pretty simple. I have washed and cleaned quart jars. I sterilize them. What I do after they're washed and cleaned, I put them in the sink. I pour boiling water all around the rim and down in them. There are different ways to sterilize. Do what you're comfortable with. There's so many ways. So I am going to put them in here, and what you're gonna see is something maybe a little odd. Some people just throw all the beans in there, fill them up, and say, I'm done. I instead, every so often, will sit there and pound them in, make sure they're really not getting packed in there, but sitting more comfortably. Now, that seems like an odd step. You always listen to grandma. Grandmas know best, right? They do, because they have much more experience than us, and they have so many years of wisdom in them from their grandmas and so forth. My grandma always said you do this because that way you get the jar really well packed. If you don't do this, they don't actually get in there that well, and since there's gonna be so much airspace between them, after you're done canning, you sometimes have like a ring of water that they float up a little bit, and then you have dead space in the bottom. My grandma would have said that looks ugly. She thought that if you're gonna go to the work of canning, it might as well be pretty too and look like you know what you're doing. So if you sit here and just pound them on the bottom of your hand a little bit, it's a soft thing to pound them on so the jar obviously won't break. It just makes sure that they're all working down and in there comfortably. Like it looks there like the jar was full, and then I sit here and do this, and all at once, look at all that headspace. So you wanna leave about a 1/2 inch of headspace on these. Headspace is counted from the top of the jar down, so a 1/2 inch. You can measure so you get used to it. I've canned enough quart of bean in my lifetime that I know where to fill them to. So I'm just gonna keep filling these. You wanna know what fits in your pressure canner before you start. So mine, and usually most of them, fit 7 total quart. So 7 or 8 maybe. So check what yours does. Read the instruction book on your pressure canner, okay? They tell you what to do. And it's honestly, it's safe if you know what you're doing if you follow the instructions. You just gotta watch it. So I'm gonna finish getting these ready, and then I'll show you how to put a ring and lid on them and get them in the canner. So now at this point, you wanna add a little bit of salt to each one. I use canning salt, and for these, I'm just used to using canning salt and I know the amount. So I'm gonna use a 1/2 teaspoon of canning salt in each one, and I'm just gonna sprinkle it right on top. So the salt is a preservant. It helps keep the color. It also helps just preserve them on the shelf. So I'm just putting some of that on each one. And then, usually you always need, obviously, a liquid. We're just gonna pour boiling water right on them. That is how easy this is. So to do that part of it, I'm gonna get my water, which I have going. It's been hot. I had it turned off then just now. I'm just gonna start pouring. So obviously this is gonna dissolve the salt. And then if you're still thinking, it's not gonna dissolve the salt, they're gonna get cooked at a really high temperature. So we kind of have no problem. You wanna leave that 1/2 inch of headspace. This is why it's nice to have a large tea kettle always, because sometimes you just need boiling water. Once you have the water on, you just want to take your prepared lids and rings, you wash them in hot soapy water, let them dry, and then use rings. You can obviously buy lids and rings together. I can so much that I'm always reusing all of my rings and just buying lids because my jars too are always reused. You know, I honestly, some of them, I get them out and I think actually they're antique because they are probably from my grandma's grandma. I'm joking, not that old, but they're definitely from my grandma. Some of them could be from my great grandma, who knows? So you can reuse too, and that's actually what's nice, is canning really is a great recycling thing and a great way to preserve. So we're gonna put these all on. You wanna do them what they say is finger tight. So it means you don't wanna strain and just do them as tight as you can, because that actually can cause them to buckle in the canner. Don't wanna do that. Just enough where they just meet resistance and they're tight. So I'm gonna finish putting this on and then we're gonna put them in the canner. So all pressure canners are different. You definitely want to read through what yours says. You should have an up-to-date pressure gauge on it. You can get them tested once a year. So know your pressure canner and follow its instructions and adjust for altitude. But with quarts, green beans always need 10 pounds pressure for 25 minutes. For pints, it's 20 minutes. So that's what's great about pressure canning. It's quicker than water bathing. So if you did these in a water bath, which is not recommended, it takes at least an hour or more. I would have to actually look what the recommendation is, but they don't even recommend that you do that, so I never have. And once you do it a couple times, I know the pressure canner sounds scary. Just don't go buy a random one at a used store without having it tested. Buy a new one if you can. Follow the instructions, you'll be good to go. So I'm gonna put these in here. You have to have a good jar lifter. Don't wanna hurt yourself. And then I'm gonna put its lid on. And this is then when you wanna let steam come out of that top vent for, at least 5 minutes in the beginning. So it's not even coming out yet because it wasn't quite boiling, it was just really hot. So I'm gonna let this sit, we're gonna let the steam come out, and then I'll show you how we pressure can. So steam has been coming out of my steam release here for about 5 minutes. So with mine, this is how it works. You put this regulator on and then it traps in the steam. So at this point, it won't reach pressure until this little thing back here pops up, so you know. And then I watch my gauge. The gauge is in front. And when it slowly starts creeping up, you watch it. And when it gets close to 10, I'll start regulating the heat just a little bit because you want to keep it at 10 pounds. You don't want to let it go over. You don't really want to let it go under too much. I know that sounds precise. After you do it a couple times, it's not as hard as it sounds. You usually find a sweet spot and you're good to go. So I'll keep it at 10 pounds pressure, set the timer for 25 minutes, and we're good. So I'll bring you back when I'm about to pull them out. It takes a while, so don't worry, because when this is done, we'll come back and show you what happens. So my timer just went. For all 25 minutes, I've kept it at 10 pounds of pressure. So now I'm going to turn off the heat. If you have a coil stove or a flat top stove, it's best if you can to move it off the heat. On a gas, it's not as important because once you shut it off, it pretty much just stops the heat. But on those two, it can still have residual heat. So do not think that you were just gonna twist this thing open. No, there's a lot of pressure still in there. We're still at 10 pounds. We want that gauge to come all the way down to 0 before, on mine what I'll do is at 0, take this off, which releases the pressure. If you would take this off now and all that steam would come out, what that would do is make those jars all at once boil again because the pressure change is really hard on them and they boil out a lot of their liquid. You don't want that. You just want a gentle, easy come down. So you can go walk away at this point. During this, was vacuuming my kitchen because I wanted to stay close by and just watch to make sure it's at 10 pounds. But at this point, walk away, let it come down to 0 all on its own. Then we'll release the pressure, open it, take them out. So it takes a few steps, but you can see this is so easy. So hang tight, it's gonna happen. Okay, so we've sat here for, it's probably close to an hour actually, and I think it probably would have only taken like 20-30 minutes, but I was doing stuff. So the gauge came all the way down to 0, you can see, so you know the pressure's off. On mine also shows that this tab is up when it's pressurized and down when it's not. So I can now take off my pressure regulator and I can open it up. You just twist, and there's gonna be some hot air, but it's not too bad. And already, guys, I just heard it. I heard a ding, but actually most of them I think are sealed anyway. So I'm gonna pull them out. Wanna use your lifter. Look at that. Beautiful canned beans. It is so simple, so easy. You don't have to put them onto a rack and a tray. I just think it's nice because it captures any drips, helps them cool off completely. Oh, did you hear that? I hope you heard that. That little ding, that is exactly what you want to hear. So I'm pulling all these out. Sometimes if you get a little bit of this like flaking down here, it just comes right off, but some of the liquid that comes out from inside with the beans, it can leave a little bit of that on it, but it will just flake off and you can wipe them off. So I'm gonna let these sit now 12 to 24 hours. Let them cool off completely, wipe them off. I always put the year on top of them just so I always remember if there's any carryover that way. And that's all it is to canning beans. Pressure cooking is easy. Follow the instructions with yours. Always adjust for altitude depending where you live because it changes. I hope this makes you feel comfortable canning. It's a great way to preserve. It's a great way to use your vegetables throughout the whole year. So if you want to see more of these videos, make sure to tell me, comment, share this around. Let everyone know that you can do this. It's easy. Use your food, grow it, enjoy it. Okay, I have more work to do, so I'm gonna let those cool off and I'm gonna let you go start hopefully getting inspired to can.